Hello. Let me ask you a question. Would you trust this man to protect your life? You might answer simply yes or no. But you should have asked, from what? Welcome to Devil Spire Falls, another insane project from another insane developer. A game where there are few rules about anything. Physics, biology, social norms, these are at most suggestions. It's one of those games where the only limiting factors are how powerful your PC is, the game itself, and your imagination. But what is it really? Well, as the Steam page states, an open-world action RPG where you can do anything of your dreams, which is mostly true if your dreams include godhood and getting launched halfway into space every time you jump. Although this one isn't optional. This has been one of my absolute favourite games over the past few months, and I've been following it since it launched on Steam. There is a lot I wish to show you about conquering the Devil Spire, about starting from nothing and becoming everything, and the adventures I had as a swamp-dwelling goblin in the weird wonderful world of the Land of Silliness. So, without further ado... Whoa there, hold on. This game is actually a success, and the developer does not sleep. By the time you are viewing this, there's probably been at least 2 updates changing stuff. So the things shown in this video may have changed. Or not. Although, there is one thing the dev might patch as a result of this video. Anyway, enjoy. For this video, I was going to play a fairy, as it was one of the new races that were added. But as I started my run, flying non-stop through the air, with my little nuts hanging gracefully towards the promised lands below, I thought, this is too easy. Not that you aren't able to exploit the shit out of this game with any character, but still. Let's at least leave a luxury like flying to the mid-game. So, I went and disposed of that character, and created one more in line with my British heritage. Brongle Bring was his name, for he was to bring chaos and mischief to those who opposed him. Which, as a goblin, is pretty much everyone, except the other monsters of this world, who recognise your immaculate swag and are forever friendly. We were starting out as a depraved, carrying nothing but guilt, and we'd invested a good amount of attribute points into intelligence. More on that later. Our first order of business was to acquire literally anything, so we gathered some wheat for its healing properties, and hit up a few nearby temples to raid the sarcophagi, which ended up containing mostly jack-all. But we did get some hatchets to throw at any unsavoury characters. We then checked out a graveyard, praying to some unknown statue, took a dip in a poisonous lake, and for some reason decided it was a good idea to attack some random man rooms. And of course, they completely slapped my little green cheeks. So, naturally, we got right back up, and thought it was a good idea to try and raid a nearby pyramid. But this had us immediately regretting the decision, after a fairy bandit, casting paralysis bread, cut us in 2 with Dragon Slayer. And respawning outside, it seemed the fairy had called backup. What the fuck are these guys? What the fuck? I just fucking broke something over my head. It was evident at this point that all we could really do was pick up wheat and converse with monsters. Interacting with anything else resulted in our swift demise. Hey. Okay, chill. That was until a small opportunity arose. A slime had decided to attack a nearby camp of nomads, and making use of our goblinness, we managed to pilfer some equipment from a knocked out reptile. Then, after a second slime caused the remaining nomad to flee, we tried to chase them down. Unfortunately though, some anomalous activity caused them to quantum tunnel out of existence. What? From here, we carried the momentum over to a prison, and although this did result in another death, we did acquire an extremely helpful item. Cotton Sleeves of Manroom. Cotton Sleeves of Manroom. Which, when equipped, had a 20% chance of spawning a manroom. Even though it was level 1, this guy absolutely slapped the bandits waiting for us outside the prison. Oh, fucking hell, alright. And we wasted no time looting their corpses. We now had a good amount of items to our name, albeit every one of them was stolen. Regardless, we then headed over to yet another prison, where outside we met a couple of fellow goblins that at first tried to attack us, but after a short scuffle and one of them surrendered, we decided to see what they had to say. Since one of them already had a 38% disposition with us, we decided to accept their quest, as if completed, we could have had the chance to recruit them as a follower. The task was simple: head somewhere and kill someone. Now, to cut a long story short, it seemed that these goblins had some ulterior motives, as after asking the other one for directions, hauling our sorry ass out into the middle of a desert, then second guessing if we'd actually gone in the right direction, we fast travelled back to the pair to check. And upon arriving back, they wanted nothing to do with us, and attacked us on sight. What do you mean it's time to die? What? Who's doing a quest for you? Chill. Well, if that's how it's going to be. Of course, though, we did not take kindly to this. After being betrayed by our own kin, we were feeling a bit directionless. We were no fighter, we had lost a great deal of our strength from repeatedly dying, and besides, the spear we had was about to shatter with the next thrust. But we weren't dumb. Well, at least as far as the 20 points of intelligence was concerned. Intelligence, of course, determines one's magical capability, but in this world also determines the rate at which skills are learnt. A very nice attribute to have a good amount of points in. So, atop a pyramid, we came to a conclusion. We were to become a great mage and wield the arcane arts against any who betray us. Most inhabitants of this land wielded some sort of magic, usually a couple of basic spells with varying effectiveness. Despite this, for us, to get to a point where we could reliably cast and exceed the skills of every other creature was going to take some grinding. We started by leveling some basic combat skills. Dodging was a good one to be proficient at, as at level 8, we would have a 50% chance to automatically dodge any attack. Oh right, skill perks. Each skill has perks that are unlocked at certain levels. For combat skills, you learn new moves. For crafting and cooking, you learn how to make better stuff. All very good. At this point, there's no real way for us to train magic skills, i.e. spellcasting, as mana doesn't regenerate, and we had little ways of regenerating it at a rate that wasn't going to force me to be alone with my thoughts. We could, though, train everything else that was going to help us get to that point, and with the help of our boosted skill learning, that is what we did. We got a bit of a feedback loop going, where we'd level up from training, invest our points into int, and continue. At the end of this short training montage, we then went on to gather some herbs. There are a number of different coloured herbs, and we were after the blue ones, which happen to grow in this area, and to no one's surprise, these restore your mana. Eating them raw doesn't regenerate it that quickly, but crushed into a powder and brewed into a potion later on is a good way to fill up that magical blue bar. We would of course need a base of operations to do this, so we found a lovely spot right next to the edge of a bog, and set up a small camp. Here we could also make use of the abundant amounts of wheat we had gathered to make some bread, a far better healing item than apples or eating the wheat raw. Lastly, we made a small farm with a hoe we acquired from a local village, and planted some more glorious blue herb. With this setup, we were feeling confident enough to try and tackle a nearby pyramid, and thankfully there was no fairy incarnation of guts waiting for us at the entrance. Pyramids in this game are these labyrinthian hellholes, designed by the developer to be as annoying as possible to navigate through. Full of traps, bandits, and sometimes monsters, they are this sick game of hide and seek, where you have to seek the platform to the next floor that always seems to be hidden in some pocket dimension around a corner you passed 17 times. This particular pyramid seemed to also have inflicted some sort of curse upon us, making us convinced that the way up was behind a wall with cracks in it. That, given our twink-like build, was completely unbreakable, and the actual way through was a hidden door we had completely missed. We sure as hell tried to break that wall though. Once you do reach the top though, you are rewarded with 4 sarcophagi, containing some very nice loot. Now, you are supposed to find levers to open the gates on these, but honestly, less time spent in this place is more time added to your lifespan. So, just punch until you get the juicy innards. What we were after, besides the enchanted gear, were spell effects. There's a certain flavour of sarcophagus that can spawn with a good amount of these, and we got lucky. We left this pyramid after learning all that we could, and looking particularly swag in some new enchanted threads. Also, we had unknowingly found the most stupidly broken item for this run, but at the time we had no idea. Besides, there were many more pyramids in this world, and our hunger for loot and knowledge was strong. So we set out to pillage, pilfer, sneak and steal from as many of them as we could. This was the plan until an unfortunate incident with a living statue caused our strength to drop down to 1. The good news, our strength couldn't get any lower. The bad news, we couldn't break anything. And the very next pyramid we entered had us trying to beat down another wall, which, if it wasn't going to happen before, then now, it would be close to impossible. So, after a good 20 minutes in this sandy tomb, desperate to reach the top, we started to get creative. Remember that stupidly broken item I said we found a few sentences ago? Well, it was actually 2 items. A pair of linen shorts and a hide medium shirt, both enchanted with flight. Using these, while positioned just right and with a bit of fiddling, we were able to no-clip straight through the walls of the pyramid and up to the loot chamber. However, the tomfoolery didn't stop there. Only one of the gates up there was opened with a lever we found earlier. It did have the exact thing we were looking for inside, but of course we wanted to open the rest, and this was not going to happen given our current physique. So once again, we engaged our immense goblin intellect and used the exact same method to no-clip outside the structure and bypass the gates, before finally flying way out and back down to the lower levels to make our escape. Now, is this completely game-breaking? Yes. Did we proceed to perfect this exploit and use it on a good number of other pyramids? Also, yes. You haven't truly played Devil Spire Falls until you've added to the list of things that the developer probably doesn't want you doing. We went on a sort of rampage through the desert, hitting up every pyramid in sight, acting out our little trick, and moving on to the next. After this small expedition, we headed back to our little den by the swamp to plant some more blue herbs. Spoiler, we never actually make use of the powder produced from this. But anyway, we also constructed a table for refining gemstones into cut gems. These gems are used to craft spells and enchant gear. They are the mage's bread and butter, and getting a good supply of them was crucial to becoming an all-powerful caster. And now that we had a decent grimoire of spell effects, it was time to start casting some spells. Since an orb stand, the station required to craft spells, required late-game materials, we would have to locate a structure containing one. And on top of this, to cut gemstones into gems, we needed at least crafting level 3. This we could do right away, and we chose the painstaking process of refining logs into planks. We learnt later on that a better way of training crafting is to simply gather a bunch of grass and turn it into a load of low-cost clothing items, like hats. But after a while, we managed to reach the desired level. Learnt cannibalism from eating a loaf of bread, and cut a good amount of rubies into shiny red gems. The rubies weren't hard to get. Most rocks mined near where you spawn should contain a couple or more. Then it was off to find an orb stand. Heading in a lesser explored direction, we managed to find a temple, and luckily, inside, we found what we needed. Our first crafted spell? One to spawn in more gems for future crafting. So, we didn't have to mine rocks like a peasant. Depending on what you want to spawn using a spell, durability can be traded for chance to spawn. For us, the gems could have spawned with a 1% durability, and it wouldn't matter since they could be still used for crafting. But we also wanted the gems spawned to be rubies, so setting the durability to 1% at our level might cause other gems, such as topaz, to spawn. So we settled to create 5 effects at 20% durability, resulting in 5 level 1.16 gems. And sure enough, casting this back at base created 5 sparkling rubies. Since spell power scales with intelligence, and in turn the level of the gems created would also scale, this spell would become less useful for crafting cheap level 1 spells later on. Even at this point, we still created the odd topaz, but it was fine for now. We then headed back to the temple to make a whole bunch of spells to train our spell crafting skill, unlocking new projectile options and the ability to make higher level spells in the process. We went on a short mission to try and find alcohol to combine with our blue powder for potions, but only ended up pillaging a village for its magical supplies and stealing one of their wolves. This wolf does not survive, by the way. But then it wasn't long before we managed to reach level 10 in spellcrafting, unlocking the Everyone spell type. This was then to be used to make a spell to restore our mana, alongside drinking tea or eating the powder we intended to make into mana potions. But out of all the spell effects we had, we lacked one: mana transfer. So, after dealing with a fireball-throwing homeless person, we set out to find it. Along the way, getting assaulted while trying to converse with some fellow goblins. Not even my own race likes me. Before hopping into a city to loot their magical shops, but coming out empty-handed. We ended up finding what we needed in a small, starving village in the middle of the desert. Now, this spell was decent in the form we found it, but we made use of the villager's orb stand to craft a better version. Yes, casting it on everyone included ourselves, but so long there were enough bodies around to leech mana from, it ended up being a net gain. Casting it inside a pyramid was especially effective. Having this spell meant we could now more freely craft and test other spells. Just like this game's inspirations, Daggerfall, Morrowind, spellcrafting gives you the ability to make whatever you want, with varying effectiveness, if you know the effects. And with our newfound freedom, this opened up the possibility for some silliness. Hex anything you don't like into a mushroom. Cast a ball that spawns a variety of armaments upon contact. Tired of the homeless taking advantage of your house that you do nothing with? Give them 4 walls and a floor, which technically counts as a building, so now you can charge them rent. Or simply make them so small they stop being relevant. Honestly, there's a lot you can do with magic, and the over 60 effects that are currently in the game. So, craft to your heart's content. But enough horsing around. We needed some spells that were actually useful. It often takes a bit of tinkering to make a spell to do the specific thing you want, and the spell preview doesn't take into account your intelligence, so what's displayed there is usually increased a good amount, depending on your level. Also note that adding a negative effect to yourself doubles the power of whatever other effects you put on the spell. This, at the moment of writing, is completely unbalanced, and is basically free power. After a while, we had a handful of spells, for killing one thing, killing everything, getting from place to place, and a much more efficient way of getting mana back, at the cost of completely destroying my frame rate if used too much. We were now a decently powerful caster, but we wanted more. Because of course we did, we're a goblin. There was another skill we hadn't even touched yet, that was to be insanely strong if trained up. That being enchanting, which was not hard to train. We started by constructing an altar at our base to make things easier. Then, gathering a bunch of grass to turn into hats, we could begin. However, you can't just enchant the whole stack, for some reason, because it only counts as 1, even though every hat in the stack gets enchanted. I don't know. I'm sure it's just some early access weirdness. So, one by one, we enchanted hats. Until, after a short while, we reached level 10, Enchanting Master. Now, what type of gear we enchanted didn't really matter. We were just looking to boost our intelligence as much as possible. Since grass was in abundance, we made a full burlap outfit. We also went and made a spell specifically for spawning opals, the highest tier of gem, so that our enchantments could be as potent as possible. And then, finally, our intelligence was now well above the maximum, even with a few of the items of clothing being used to boost strength and wisdom, which now meant all our spells were scaled up to almost godlike powers, meaning it only took a moment to bring our character up to max level using a spell, and we were now as powerful as we could get without further magical aid. But we still had one more thing to do, the quest you can never abandon, the urge to conquer a Devil Spire, and now it was finally time. But let me be real with you. If you were at any point over the last few minutes thinking we'd be far over-leveled to be only now tackling this, you'd be correct, 100%. If you didn't, then I think the fact we travelled halfway across the map in a little over 30 seconds to reach the spire speaks for itself. Once we arrived and entered the spire, we used the same cheese we did on the pyramids to completely bypass the torturous dungeon, fly straight into the boss room, and with a little bit of difficulty, slay the abomination waiting for us. After looting the foul beast, there was only one thing left to do: fell the dreaded spire once and for all. Again, an adventurer led by the urge has felled a Devil Spire, once again spreading the accursed fog throughout the land. The news spread like wildfire, alongside another about a new Devil Spire appearing. The people feel naught but dread at the endless cycle that corrupts their world. But as long as there is someone strong enough, the urge will guide them to do the same. Is this the end? No, not in the slightest. After you defeat one of these, like the end message said, another one springs up somewhere else in the world. And to my knowledge, you can keep felling spires forever. There is a catch, though. Every single enemy scales up a great deal when you complete a spire, getting all around faster, stronger, and able to deal more damage. The maximum level for your character is 50. There is no cap for enemy levels. So you may go on until your heart's content, and your hunger for ultimate power satiated. But it won't be. You can always get stronger. However, it is a Sisyphean task, and the byproduct is a truly broken world. Every felling brings the creatures of these lands closer to being the true gods. Either you keep adapting, or you let the boulder roll back down. All the while, said creatures do nothing but gain power. Perhaps while completely unaware. They may not even know that you are responsible for this, but should you cross them in your mission to become more powerful, truly, you will have made yourself vastly insignificant. Now, a few words about the game. It's very good. It's probably the game I'm most excited for the future of. Now, I could point out a whole bunch of things I think need to be changed. I think there are some blatantly obvious balancing quirks, shall we say, but a lot of what I think needs to be improved will just come naturally. The dev clearly has a strong vision, and is working tirelessly to see it through. Also, if you didn't know, each update is voted upon by the members of the game's Discord server. Although I believe this is just what should be added next, and it's not a one thing over the other kind of situation. The game honestly just needs to grow, and I think one day it'll be a great successor to the games it's so evidently inspired by. Ethereal, you've made a damn good game, and I only wish the best for its future. Thank you for watching, and if you made it this far, be sure to check out the game. Personally, I've had a great time following its development so far. If you enjoyed this, be sure to check out my other videos, and as always, more content to come. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.